Welcome to the Office of the Leader of the Opposition Press Conference for July 27, 2023. Welcome. Let me start by introducing our panel for today. To my right is none other than Mr. Elton Lowe, economist, and to his right, the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament. Welcome. Today's press statement will be read by the Leader of the Opposition.
Good morning, members of the press. PPP misusing the Guyana police force against its opponents. The opposition wishes to condemn the use of the Guyana police force to achieve political objectives, while at the same time ensuring the PPP senior officials who are accused of serious crimes are not investigated, or the police carries out the investigation in a way that allows for the PPP accused senior official to go free and not face the law. The political harassment of Member of Parliament, Mr. David Patterson, is one of the most recent manifestations of the PPP's harassment of the opposition. Mr. Patterson is being accused of violating the law. What is interesting is for this minor offense, he's placed on $200,000 station bail, which is clearly an act of political harassment. In the case of the allegations of bribery and corruption leveled against Barra Jagdeo in the Vice News report, the PPP instructed the police not to investigate. Mr. Jagdeo's alleged crime is far worse than the allegations leveled against Mr. Patterson. Yet the police are unable to investigate an alleged crime that has serious implications for the nation as a whole. In the case of the alleged rape and sodomizing of an indigenous child, the police was very complacent and clearly worked assiduously to ensure that Mr. Nigel Dharamlal did not face the full force of the law. For the opposition, this is not a closed case. It's a case of money and other forms of power being used to intimidate ordinary citizens and to allow the members of the PPP elite class in Guyana to violate the law and go unpunished. It must be stated here that rape has no statute bar, and therefore those who believe in justice will continue to pursue this case until there is justice. Madhya Dormitory fire. We will not relent in our call for an independent commission of inquiry. It is now 66 days since the tragic Madhya Dormitory fire that took the lives of 20 young Guyanese on the 21st of May, 1923. In that time, the government deployed several devious and heartless ploys to avoid taking full responsibility and to brush the matter under the carpet. Most recently, Guyanese across the social and political spectrum joined in condemning the insulting act by the government to offer the parents the stingy financial compensation and to coerce or intimidate them into signing documents absolving the government from any future potential claims for liability and injury. Guyanese must continue to reject these acts by the PPP. Its judicial system, Guyanese are awarded $20 million or more for libel and defamation. It is therefore ridiculous for the government to offer $5 million per person for the loss of life. Life cannot be that cheap in a country where the government squanders billions of taxpayers' money. To date, the government has failed to constitute the long-awaited commission of inquiry into the fire. There can be no excuse rape has no statute bar. And therefore, those who believe in justice will continue to pursue this case until there is justice. Madhya Dormitory fire, we will not relent in our call for an independent commission of inquiry. It is now 66 days since the tragic Madhya Dormitory fire that took the lives of 20 young Guyanese on the 21st, 1923. In that time, the government deployed several devious and heartless ploys to avoid taking full responsibility and to brush the matter under the carpet. Most recently, Guyanese across the social and political spectrum joined in condemning the insulting act by the government to offer the parents the stingy financial compensation and to coerce or intimidate them into signing documents absolving the government from any future potential claims for liability and injury. Guyanese must continue to reject these acts by the PPP. It should be noted that in the judicial system, Guyanese are awarded $20 million or more for libel and defamation. It is therefore ridiculous for the government to offer $5 million per person for the loss of life. Life cannot be that cheap in a country where the government squanders billions of taxpayers' money. To date, the government has failed to constitute the long-awaited commission of inquiry into the fire. There can be no excuse for the delay. Several organizations, including the parliamentary opposition, have publicized detailed terms of reference. And there are several well-qualified and professional Guyanese and CARICOM nationals who can sit on such an independent commission. Guyanese must see the delay for what it is. It is an act by a government that is interested in its own political self-preservation at any cost, one that has no sense of morality, integrity, and duty but to itself. We will not relent until a commission of inquiry is established, until all those responsible in the PPP cabinet are held accountable, until all corrective measures are identified and implemented across the country for similar facilities, until justice for the dead Madhya children and their parents is served. We owe it to the dead and to the wider society to hold the government accountable for what is clearly their incompetence and lack of care for our children. Government must announce salary increases and cost of living relief, for 2023. True to its anti-working class and anti-poor nature, the incompetent and corrupt PPP government has displayed its usual heartlessness in refusing to grant any salary and wage increases to teachers, the police, the Guyana Defense Force, and public servants. In addition, they have offered no cost of living relief to ordinary Guyanese in 2023. Last week in the National Assembly, Minister with responsibility for finance in the office of the President, Ashni Singh, when asked about the $5 billion voted in the 2023 national budget to help Guyanese survive the high cost of living, he gave an answer that may not have even convinced he himself. In a nutshell, he reported that none of the money has been spent, at least usefully. Likewise, we are not surprised by the government's bad faith in the ongoing salary negotiations with the GTU. We see no interest being shown by the government to activate the collective bargaining agreement with the public service unions. If last year's salary increases are any guide, then the government will likely impose an increase that is below the inflation rate and not retroactive. It will then continue on its merry way, doling out large contracts to its cronies for infrastructure projects. Clearly, the 2023 budget was not intended to help the poor. It is a mechanism to put wealth in the hands of the PPP elites, families, friends, and favorites, while allowing the people to punish. The government shows no care that midwives, nursing assistants, and nurses continue to leave the country for more respect and more pay in the UK and elsewhere. It is the people of Guyana who are harmed by the decline of our health services. It is the people of Guyana who are harmed by the decline in our health services. When teachers pack up and fly out, our schools and school children pay the price. When our qualified university graduates migrate in droves, the people pay the price. When the public service is no longer seen by young people as providing career opportunities and pathways to decent living standards, it is the country that suffers. The PPP does not get this and never will. The PPP must use oil resources to pay these critical sectors a livable income, as we have indicated we will do in government. On the question of wages and salaries, what do we in the coalition subscribe to as a party and government in waiting? As we have said before, our principles and commitments are as follows. One, there should be no working poor in Guyana. We now have the financial means to lift all Guyanese well over the poverty line. We recommit ourselves to the 1 million per household annually in a structured, open, transparent way and based on objective criteria. We will build a modern, motivated, and highly trained teaching and public service, as it is vital to the realization of our people-centered development strategy, which is based on our vision for Guyana. Such a public service is required to deliver top quality health, education, and other services, to manage a comprehensive social protection system, to provide efficient services to the private sector, and to ensure that affairs of the people can be efficiently and effectively administered. 3, we will respect the public sector unions as the legitimate representatives of public servants. This is an error that must be rectified, and we are committed to doing so. Under a future coalition government, public servants will be guaranteed a livable income through several measures, such as increasing the minimum wage, raising the tax threshold, abolishing income tax for workers at the bottom of the scale, topping up salaries as required through allowances, and provided training for job advancement. These measures will work in combination with our social protection programs, such as our cash grant programs, our early childhood care and education plan, our night school program, our utility bill relief program, and our rent-to-own plan for housing. In addition, we will implement a rent assistance scheme to ensure all public servants, in fact, all Guyanese, can enjoy a high quality and a comfortable life. Guyanese continue to get little or no benefit from our oil and gas resources. Handouts to the average Guyanese, while at the same time putting billions in the hands of PPP cronies, is unacceptable and must be brought to an end. The opposition is committed to making Guyana one of the best countries to live in for all Guyanese. Permit me also to comment on the 4-lane highway on the East Coast. This, to me, suggests, 1, that the government has no plan. 2, it's a possibility that it is being pursued for vindictive ends. Why do I say that? This year and last year, the government was rebuilding bridges on that highway. and they are building bridges for a 2-lane highway. Why would you, if you are a competent government, have a plan for a 4-lane highway? In rebuilding the bridges, build bridges for 2-lane with barriers, which you will have to break to put a 4-lane highway. I suggest it could be vindictiveness because there is far more scope behind rather than in front on the 4-lane highway. A new, on the line top, a new 4-lane highway could be built at the back of those villages. It will open new lands and it will be in a much better position, and you don't have to disrupt the lives of the people on the line top unnecessarily. And so we believe this should be relooked, that the government is incompetent or vindictive, whichever one, there is need for change. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for a question from our media personnel. And as is customary, by the raise of hand, I will permit you to speak. And of course, we start with questions on the press statement. Mr. Adam Hart.
A very good morning, everybody. My question is easy. What recourse is there for the police apparent control by government? For example, the Comrade leader spoke of the refusal to investigate actions against PPP people. There has been a refusal to investigate reports of cybercrime. For example, Amazon Walden made one such report, Paul Slow made another. You have, no one else seems to have any way of motivating the police to act. What recourse does the opposition have?
I believe that the opposition, we will call on people who are wrongfully arrested, etc. And one of the first actions is that we should take legal action against the Ghana Police Force. I believe the Ghana Police Force needs to recognize that its sole purpose is to uphold the law. Of course, we will also have to protest the Ghana Police Force because the government seems not to understand anything else. But it is also important that the Ghana Police Force get a proper commissioner of police. If you have an unqualified, uncertified head of the Ghana Police Force, then that in itself makes it vulnerable. And so we will have to push to get a qualified police commissioner that can command the respect of the citizens, the police force, and operate in keeping with the law as it relates to the government.
Just to build off of that, I see we have a lot of journalists here. One of the reasons that it is vital that we have a police force that is professional and that a police force that is not subject to government influence is because we all recall a couple of years ago the incident in Saudi Arabia where there were allegations that a journalist was killed by the Saudi Arabian government. Now, we, even as journalists from your perspective, we don't want to see a society that accumulates resources, but where people are being victimized by a police force and where even journalists face victimization by a police force. If we allow what may seem to some to be small incidents to continue, then that is something that every Guyanese will be faced with and a real danger that our society faces.
Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Dennis Shabra.
Good morning, Mr. Norton. As far as your measures that you have suggested, your relief measures, that is, for the working poor, can you say how soon do you think those can be implemented without any impact on the other aspects of the economy? Secondly, what salary increase would you recommend at this stage to cushion the impact of the rising cost of living? And thirdly, in the last few weeks or so, there was an international report that has to do with the Mohammeds and the implications of this having for the investment in the shore base. What are your thoughts about what has been reported with respect to the Mohammeds and the implications for the oil sector?
All right, let me start with the first question. If one accepts that there is about 25% corruption in terms of the use of the national budget, your question is answered. If you just curb corruption, you will save 25% of a 7 billion plus budget. And I can assure you that the measures we are talking about wouldn't cost that much. So that is the first thing. Secondly, there is an overemphasis way beyond our institutional capacity and capability to deliver the infrastructure projects that are listed. And so you must have infrastructural development. We're interested in infrastructural development, but clearly it makes no sense that you put in all of these projects and allocating money, and at the end of the year, you cannot complete even the portion that you set up to do. I saw the Minister of Public Works, Mr. Warner Jill, complaining about one contractor, but there are many. And so if you make the budget a people-centered budget in which you put measures to facilitate the private sector development, if you handle your taxes correctly, if you, in looking at your budget, allocate more resources to the social sector, education, health, etc., then you will be in a better position to develop the people in the society. The budget makes the fundamental mistake of believing infrastructure drives development. While infrastructure is important to development, it's the development of the human resource. One of the characterizing features of all successful countries is where resources go into human resource development. It is done properly, and so the production and productivity levels rise, and you're in a better position. So I believe just rearranging the priorities in the budget can allow you to satisfy all the measures we are talking about. And if you add the billions of dollars the PPP used to bribe people in the last elections, you would recognize it is estimated that they spent about $9 to $12 billion of taxpayers' money. We believe one of the reasons they can't pay the salary increases is because they use that money in the election campaign. If they could just operate as decent citizens, as a government for the people, then they can be the resources to put in the development of the people. As it relates to the Mohammed case, the case of the Mohammeds, I read the report. I will say just a few things. One, I believe anybody who is in breach of law should face the full force of the law. But since I do not have the details at my disposal, I would say this, which I've said about every case, including the recent Patterson case where the police must investigate. Then the police should investigate and determine whether it's a credible case or not. I'm in no position to pronounce whether it is credible or not. What I do know is the police is obligated under the law to investigate all allegations of illegalities in the society.
If I could just build off of that, I believe one of the questions that was asked was regarding the salary increase that we would recommend for public servants. Mr. Chabral, you can correct me if I've misunderstood your question. We've previously said that public servants should receive at least a 50% salary increase. But as
Under the precise number as of now.
we've previously said that at least a 50% salary increase is what should be provided. But we also want to call attention to the way that the government is deliberately ignoring this issue, because as of this year, IMF estimates indicate that Guyana has, by some measures, a higher per capita income at purchasing power parity. I know that's a technical term, but essentially Guyana's per capita income, if you look at our GDP, is higher than the United Kingdom's. Now, by the end of next year, we will be within the top 10 in the entire world. It is unsustainable for the government to believe that it can continue to have Guyanese live, first of all, in poverty, and second of all, as the working poor and public servants for a start, especially with reports that public servants are leaving Guyana for the UK and for many other countries. That is low-hanging fruit in terms of helping Guyanese to benefit from this tremendous growth. There's no point in having huge levels of growth without the average Guyanese being able to benefit from that. So 50% salary increase is a start, but it is certainly not an ending point, and additional substantial increases will be required.
Thank you.
But I should add, we have said continuously that it's not just a question of pouring money into the system, but the government has to have plans to increase production and the services sector. For instance, in my budget presentation, I recommended that we ensure that there is sustainable regional agriculture development programs. I pointed out that regions 1, parts of region 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10 do not have comprehensive plans for agriculture. And therefore, almost immediately, the cost of living will be high there. But if, as you increase your salaries, etc., you put mechanisms in place to ensure that there's an agricultural plan and there are projects there, then you will be creating more goods for people to purchase and therefore attenuating inflation. I don't think anybody can doubt that there is the need for those regions to produce their own food, their own both crop and livestock. But the government, in its attempt to dominate, wants to keep agricultural production in its strong regions. And so it asphyxiates, it stifles economic development in other regions. And I believe, again, if it is complemented by proper agricultural plans, proper agro-processing plans, and the movement in the direction of manufacturing, which is also dependent on cheap electricity, then we can have a better situation. So I do not buy the vice president argument, which I think is ridiculous, that when you put money into the system, then the prices will go up. That only happens if you don't have the other measures that complement it to ensure you reduce cost of living and inflation.
Thank you. I see.
And to what extent are you factoring in the volatility of oil prices globally and what that can mean for the economy as far as sustaining recurrent expenditure? And secondly, Mr. Norton, has your party ever received funding from the Mohammeds?
First of all, I can only speak about my tenure, and I can say to you, during my tenure, I know of nothing, but I will say this to you as well. This is our party internal business. I'm answering you on this occasion, but I'm not disposed to discussing the party's internal business at these fora. I'm granting you this one time. I can say without fear of contradiction that we are not financed by any Mohammeds. I don't know which Mohammeds you're talking about, but no Mohammed that I know of contributes to our party. What was the other question?
Sustainability of
the sustainability of Was it sustainability?
Sustainability of funding,
Due to
Ministry of
Oh, yes,
Britain-
I now remember it. You were saying with the fluctuation in the oil prices. As I understand it, one of the purpose of the fund, sovereign wealth fund, was to ensure we have resources there for those times, apart from the fact of putting funds there for future generation. The problem is this government is spending wild. This government has no plan. I have no fear if we have a proper sovereign wealth fund in which money is put aside for those bad times and for when the prices are low, that you can sustain it. And mind you, I am not seeing this whole thing as just relying on oil and gas. I see oil and gas as playing the role of providing the resources for us to expand the economy, diversify the economy, build a proper agro sector, build a proper manufacturing sector, improve the agricultural sector, build your tourism sector, so that you have a well-diversified economy that can also help to absorb low prices when they are there. So it has to be a kind of a comprehensive approach rather than when you ask the question, it sounds as if you believe the intention is dependent on oil forever. No, it cannot be. You have to have a structured plan to ensure that the non-oil sector, the non-oil sector increases to the point where it reduces the vulnerability and it can stand on its own in the economy.
Mr. Cabral, it's also important for us to note, you will have heard the leader say earlier that corruption is a major factor in terms of the loss of the country. There's also mismanagement and the relentless incompetence of the government. We've heard the IMF over several years continue to insist that the government needs to reform, continue to urge that the government reforms its system of public investment, where it is indicated that for every dollar that is spent, Guyana is losing 41 cents, which is utterly unbelievable and far underperforms our peers in the Caribbean and Latin America. Now, we are committed to better governance, we are committed to cutting out corruption, and we're committed to managing Guyana's public investments in a much better way. Now, the point of that is, if the country is managed well, then there will be more than enough resources available. In fact, hundreds of billions of dollars within the next 5 years available. However, if the PPP continues to insist that there is no problem, continues to believe that it knows everything, and continues to rely on the dictates of one man and so on, then we're never going to see progress in terms of running the country more efficiently. It is unacceptable that Guyana should substantially underperform its peers in Latin America and the Caribbean. That to me is beyond belief.
For the sake of clarity, Mr. Norton, you said you did not know which Mohammeds I was talking about. I was talking about the Mohammeds who were reported in the Reuters report. And in that note, you said you have not, under your tenure, taken money from them, but would you take money from them in the future?
I would not comment on that. I'm saying to you, at present, we have not taken any money from any Mohammeds. Who we will take money from in the future is not a question I would want to answer. And there are times, and I'm not here talking about the Mohammeds, there are times when people will offer you assistance, and as a party, we're not going to go out there and say, well, X give us assistance when we know you have a vindictive government that will seek to punish them, take away contracts, etc. So I will urge you to understand I've given you the option to answer that question, but I don't intend to continue down that road because of the nature of the political beast we are dealing with. If you observe, the government isn't happy that cases are being brought against them. We have seen them now intervening into the judiciary and into the Guyana Revenue Authority, talking about going after people's properties. And at the same time, they're saying that, I know for sure that, I'm trying to remember his name, the engineer who Jagdeo had accused, who took him to court and won As far as I know, up until now, he is not being paid, but the Attorney General isn't talking about him being paid. He is identifying his political opponents. He is intervening into the judicial system. He has sent to the GRA asking for people records and the information, which as far as I'm concerned is illegal. So you might doing what you're doing with good intention, but we're dealing with a bad government.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Didi. I think it is that one.
Hi, yes, good day, everyone. Mr. Norton, the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, in a tweet after his meeting with you, sir, said that constructive opposition is essential. However, that has been interpreted by some as a call for more constructive opposition from you. How do you respond?
I would just say your interpretation is wrong and you weren't part of the meeting, so you don't understand the vicissitudes of it.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Divina. Hi, Journal.
Did you say Davina?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Good day, everyone. Mr. Norton, I'd just like to follow up on my colleague's question there from Stabrook News. She asked you about your meeting with Mr. Blinken. I know you said in the past that you would like to renegotiate the contract with ExxonMobil. Did this at any time, did you raise this at any time with the Secretary of State? And secondly, you mentioned in your statement that government should use the revenue, the oil revenue, to pay higher salaries and also an annual, you said you would like to do an annual 1 million payout to households. Do you believe the current revenue stream is strong enough to facilitate these plans?
First of all, let me say this to you. At no stage did I use the concept renegotiation. I have always said, and I want to make it very clear, the choice of words for a political party rests in the political party. Every other entity could choose their words as they see fit. We have said that within this agreement, there is a mechanism for us to engage ExxonMobil and make whatever changes we think needed. You asked me if the present flow. I would say this, I would like for us to get more. But even with what we have, if we minimize the corruption, if we ensure that it's used properly, our people could get more. But as a political leader who has to represent the interests of the people of Guyana, my interest will always be in pursuing more benefits from any company, just not ExxonMobil, any company that comes to Guyana to ensure the people of Guyana get more. But having said you want that, you also have to focus on, are these resources being used properly? And here is where I differ. I don't believe our resources is being used properly, and we need to do more. It is one thing to say, let us get more. But what happens if we get more for it to continue to go into the hands of the PPP elite, family, friends, and favorite? Then getting more wouldn't serve the people of Guyana. So we want more, but we want it to serve the people of Guyana. And I want to reiterate, like I said before, all of us have interests. Our key interest is in serving the people of Guyana. And we believe that in serving the people of Guyana, we need to utilize the particular clause in the agreement to get as much as we can get for the people of Guyana. And that position is not one that will change. We will continue to go down that road to ensure that our people benefit and we maximize our benefit. We are living in the real world. In the real world, the company invests, they will seek to pursue their interests. It is our task now as opposition, and when we were in government, to ensure we do everything to ensure the people of Guyana get more from the contract.
Thank you, sir. I didn't hear you respond to my question on whether or not you raised the issue of the contract with Mr. Blinken.
We spoke to oil and gas issues.
Okay, but you didn't mention the contract with him.
Well, I would assume once you were talking about oil and gas, you were talking in the confines of the contract. But just to say specifically, you want to know if I raised with him what we will do. I did say, if I recall, that we will do everything to ensure the people of Guyana benefit from oil and gas. And we express concern of about the level of corruption that exists in the government.
Thank you, sir. If I can just very quickly, another question. You said before that 50 days in office that you would call Exxon to the table. But I just wanted to know, sir, if your party isn't elected, would you still be pressing for Guyanese to benefit from more from this contract?
Well, we have been doing that all the time. We have made it very clear. I don't recall saying that in 50 days.
In 50 days, we'll invite them to the table to speak.
That was probably said in a press conference when I wasn't there. But I see no difficulty with engaging Exxon to ensure that the Guyanese people can benefit more from the contract. I see no problem with it. And if it could be done in 10 days, I will have it done in 10 days. But I didn't recall us saying 50 days. So I apologize for that.
No problem, sir. Can I just ask two more questions as I have you here? I know you haven't been hosting your press conferences as regular as before. So very quickly, sir, Exxon has said, and we reported on this today, that that Guyana is its future and it foresees further growth for the company with Guyana's resources. What are your thoughts in this regard? And even as government refuses to renegotiate this contract, even though it promised to do so. And we also reported, sir, that there has been a huge decline in our goal declarations, even as these foreign companies continue to make or announce mega fines. What are your thoughts here?
First of all, as it relates to decline in gold, let me deal with the first question. These companies saying that their future is Guyana. These companies are free to say what they want to say. It is the task of the Guyana government and the people of Guyana to ensure that as they pursue their interests, we do everything to pursue the people of Guyana interests. And whatever it takes, we will do to pursue the interests of the people of Guyana. We, in opposition, we have said that. In government, we undertake to change it. I don't see why in future we will change. Our party is based on, we are outlining every time we talk, a people-centered development strategy. The principles and philosophy underpinning that strategy, they dictate that we continue to pursue the interests of the people of Guyana wherever we stand, whether it's government or opposition. And I can guarantee you, while in opposition, we will agitate for change. When in government, we will implement the changes that we promise. And I'm saying to you as well, in future opposition, after we gain government the next time, we will continue to pursue a people-centered development strategy. Now, as it relates to the decline in goal declaration, etc., I think unless we put the goal board in order, put the institutions responsible for monitoring and working with those industries, then we'll have the problems we have. And also, if you have the people who are bent on smuggling our goals, cheating the country, close to the People's Progressive Party, it is very difficult to solve the problem. But I believe with a change of government, and placing in government people who are genuinely interested in Guyana, then those issues could be dealt with. I hope I've covered all your questions.
Thank you. I see that.
Mr. Norton, I need to follow up, sir, on the matter of renegotiation. Why not renegotiate? What is wrong with renegotiating the contract?
Well, if I put this thing in context, let me say this to you. When I became leader of the PNCR and then leader of the opposition, the debate on renegotiation was one in which it appeared as if some of the proponents were saying they will arbitrarily renegotiate. And I avoided the concept of renegotiation because contextually, that is the perception that developed. Now, as a political leader that has to deal with contracts, etc., what we would have done is to look at the contract. When we would have looked at the contract, we have seen that there are mechanisms there to make changes to the contract, and we will do that. I recall under David Granger, changes were made, but what I avoid is the use of the concept renegotiation, which can be misconstrued as arbitrary and outside of the confines of the law. Once it is used within the confines of the law, I have no problem. I will, like I said, we will do everything to ensure the people of Guyana benefit more. And may I say to you, people choose the language they want to use based on their position and interests. It might suit some people's interests to say renegotiate, but as a leader of the party, we have to be matured and understand the evolution of the concept contextually and decide what is the best language to use. And that we intend to continue to do.
Thank you. I see
Please.
Of Mr. Adam Harris.
Yeah. Actually, now, sir, one of the things the opposition had done was make recommendations for the COI into the Madia fire. I think Ms. McDonald also mentioned that in her recent podcast with Don Hastings. With the state actually tampering with the fire scene, clearing the debris and all of that, will that impact the recommendations you made for the COI?
Well, first, the government is reckless, careless, and I think covering up what their situation is. They're covering their tracks. The government must have known. Let us go to the Brick Dam fire. They were condemned for immediately after the fire, removing everything so you couldn't get a proper investigation. So they cannot say they didn't know. They must have known that if you're going to get a proper investigation, even if you're just there on TV watching CSI or one of them, any child will know that you do not tamper with a crime scene. The government did what they did. Clearly, it's an attempt to cover up and to ensure that people never get to the bottom of this story. Now, I do believe it will impact negatively on the investigation, but I do believe there is still need for an investigation, but that it should be done by people independent of the government. People who are prepared to follow the facts rather than follow the dictate of Barra Jack Neal. And so we want an independent inquiry. We believe that the government is contemptuous of the citizenry of this country by offering $5 million. I mean, it is alleged that $10 and $25 million were paid in bribes. If individuals can do that. You're trying to tell me the state that has resources, that carries a big delegation to China, could only afford to pay 5 million to these people. You cannot compensate for debt. You cannot compensate for debt caused by the incompetence of this government. But it is ridiculous, outrageous for a government to offer $5 million to these individuals. I don't know what calculations they use if they say, well, the children were likely to live to this age, and based on their capacity, they are likely to become X, Y, and Z. And so they would have been earning for their families X, Y, and Z. And then if they did any basic analysis, $5 million cannot last a year. So we want an independent investigation, but we do believe the government did everything to compromise the investigation, just like they did in the Dharamlal case. It is evident that from the inception, the government did not intend for the law to take its course. And so you saw all the shenanigans ongoing. The DPP would generally deal with certain issues. I am dead sure if a file go up to Patterson in a minute, it will say charge. Yeah. But the DPP was sending it back for more information. And by the time you know it, a deal has been struck and the young lady is forced into a corner. But the Guyanese got the thing with the cigar don't sleep.
As a quick follow-up, sir, I want to ask you, or any member of the head table, your reaction to this apparent position taken by the girl, bearing in mind that she allowed herself to go into protective custody, bearing in mind that she gave statements on camera to the police and Blossom and all of that. Given all that went on for this position now, what would be your reaction, sir?
I would say, first of all, one, the government has to explain a number of things. There's an allegation against a policeman, I think in Essequibo, in which it was alleged he was involved in some fixing. That is a story by itself. Second thing, this young lady was taken back to the home of Dharamlal. Why is it, if there was no fact to it, the young lady was taken back there, and why didn't she at that time say, no, no, this is not the house I've been to? But she pointed out that they painted over, which established that she was at the house. Now, the police took reports. The police, if they believe what they end up saying, could have said that these reports weren't credible, and therefore question the credibility of the reports. The credibility of the reports were never questioned. And so that in itself raises issues. Don't forget the Child Protection Unit became involved, interviewed the young lady, got information. At that point, the Child Protection Unit never said that it was a scam. In fact, they took her into protective custody, which suggests that at least at the level of the unit, they believe that there was some amount of credibility. So, like I said in the press statement, this is an offense that has no statute bar. And I believe people will continue to pursue it. It has to be pursued. Then we must note that one of the strategies of this government is to push people in poverty so that they can use money to control and dominate. It is evident here that it is the power of the purse that was used to get the young lady to retract what she was saying. And you can put yourself in the place of a child, 16, 17 years old, in which the police coming at you, the bribers coming at you, the political operatives coming at you. They would have worn her down. She must have arrived at the point where it was too much for her. That doesn't change the fact that these are credible allegations. Just after that, the lawyer Todd put up that he has a client in which allegations of rape are made against that client. And that client spent 72 hours in the lockup. This elite alleged rapist did not spend 12 hours, got bail before the 72 hours. And in fact, what they did, they put him back on the road, which means, and as I understand it, the girl was in protective custody not far from his house. All of those factors to me suggest that the government colluded, the PPP was hell-bent. You remind me of one incident of allegation of rape, including when Manik Chan had out rape in the parliament, in which the women in the PPP didn't come to the assistance of the alleged rape victim. All of them were silent. Mind you, the young lady put in this document that she was warned by a particular minister. That minister could have come out and said it is lie or true if they weren't warned. But if you go to the Rupununi, if you go to these villages, you know that it is a habit of the PPP ministers and government officials for them to abuse their power and do ill to indigenous children and other people. So I'm suggesting here that this is not a closed case. This is a case in which money, power, authority, and the placing of people in poverty together were used to intimidate a child and their family, and at the same time compensate and bribe people so that you get the outcome that you get. But human beings, assuming they have a conscience, will have to live with that problem until justice is served.
And in addition to that, let me just quickly add that after all of these weeks, nobody apart from the police, child care protection, and the Ministry of Education knew this young lady. If this issue was not so, why did you wait for all of this time to pass, like the leader just said, and then you come to show a face and a name? Nobody knew a name. Nobody knew a face, but you came out after all of this time. And so it leaves many, as a matter of fact, it doesn't leave. It has opened the can of worms where many, many more questions are going to be asked. And I'm sure we're not going to get answers for them. But let me just quickly say too, if this was not true, why did the president, as it is reported, passed that down to Minister Manik Chand, who passed that down to the CEO, who called the school to get information regarding this child? If it were not true, why did we take all of those steps? Additionally, the young lady's cell phone was taken away from her. The phones of others within that child care unit who were there were taken away from them when they recognized this young lady was making contact with persons. In addition to that, we recognize that the attorney, Dr. Dexter Todd, reported that they were prevented, as well as the Honorable Kemrat Ramjatan said they were prevented from making contact with this young lady, even though her parents contacted them. So when we look at all of these reports that we're having, for a young lady to come out now to say it never happened, then maybe we back to the days of Nancy's story. And we know that this is not a Nancy story. But what this here has done is to set a dangerous precedence for many more young Amerindian girls and other girls, because it has come to a point now where people are going to be very skeptical. Persons who want to really help, if there is a real situation, persons are going to be very, very skeptical about helping. But like we said, we are not going to allow this matter to rest. More than that, let me conclude by saying, if it were not true, the same Nigel who said that Nigel could not, the other Nigel could not count, why did you go there to seek the services of that law firm?
I think also the fact that he was involved in a dildo comment suggests the proclivity.
I would just add as well that this is not the first time that that particular minister had been accused of that particular crime within the last year. That was in fact the second time that he'd been accused of that particular crime. That is also in the public, an accusation made by an individual who even had topped CXC at the time. So this is I think the culmination of a string of allegations. What concerns me is that after initial allegations were made, and over the course of the last several years, we've seen many allegations that this minister had been allowed to continue in those functions without being withdrawn for investigation. So it is just sad that we've come to this stage, and it is sad that we've not yet seen justice for the wide range of allegations that have been made against this particular minister.
Thank you. At this time, I will take any final question. Any other question in this regard? All right. With no other questions being asked, I want to thank our media houses for joining today's press conference, and for those who will be viewing on our social media platform. Thank you, and do have a wonderful afternoon.